everyone. My name is Alex Gonzalez, and today I'll be presenting my FRP project. And my topic is on Latino stereotypes in American movies and television. My presentation looks at how these portrayals shape identity, public perception, and contribute to social inequality. So a little bit of background. I wanted to study this topic because media plays a huge role in how we learn about race, cultures, and identities. And movies and TVs aren't just like entertainment. They're powerful social tools that tell audiences what different groups are like. And for Latino people, stereotypes are everywhere in American media, and they often repeat the same limited images. For example, like criminals or maid characters. So my project connects these portrayals to bigger, like sociological patterns, like racial hierarchy or labeling, gender roles, and symbolic interactionism. My research focuses on how Latino stereotypes influence racial identity, cultural expectations, and public perception. These stereotypes matter because they affect how Latino people are viewed by others, but also how they view themselves. They shape what roles seem possible in society, what behaviors are judged, and what identities feel like acceptable. For my research question that is guiding my project is how are Latino people stereotypically portrayed in American movies and television, and what effects do these portrayals have on public perception and identity? Everything in my presentation connects back to like this question. For my thesis statement, is that American media reinforces harmful stereotypes about Latino communities, and these portrayals contribute to broader patterns of prejudice and racism. These stereotypes don't stay like inside the screen. They influence how people act toward Latinos and how Latino audiences understand themselves. For my first example, one of the most common stereotypes is the Latino criminal or like the gang member. This stereotype shows, especially in like Latino men characters, linking them with violence, drugs, and danger overall. And when people constantly see these images, they start to associate like tattoos or like accents or certain clothing with like criminality. This happens through symbolic interactionism, where audiences learn to read these symbols as meaning danger or untrustworthiness. For some examples that I got from like movies is the tax collector and the movie End of Watch. They reinforce this image heavily, and these portrayals impact like policing or racial profiling, job opportunities, and public trust, which connects directly to institutional racism. It also ties into scapegoat theory, because Latino communities are often shown as the root of violence or social problems. For my second example is the big stereotype as the Latina maid or domestic worker. This stereotype usually targets Latina women and locks them into servitude roles, basically. Some examples that I got is are the movies Made in Manhattan and Spanglish. These movies make it seem like Latina women always work in either cleaning or caregiving jobs. And these portrayals reinforce strict gender roles where Latina women are expected to be obedient or like lower status. They also feed into a culture of prejudice because audiences begin to assume this is a proper place for Latina women in society. And when these stereotypes influence hiring or expectations in the real world and in the real workplace, they also reinforce institutional racism because some well-prepared or well-educated Latina women um, often um, they get affected by these type of stereotypes. My last example is the hypersexual Latina, and this stereotype shows Latina women as like seductive or dramatic, and mentally unstable, basically. And I think a well-known example is the character Gloria from Modern Family. And I found another movie called Hustlers that also lean into these images. They, they're portraying like a Latina woman being like the leader in, or like the main character in a strip club, basically. And this stereotype is rooted in sexism and racialized gender expectations. It reduces Latina women to sexual objects instead of like complex people. These portrayals can make Latina women feel pressure to change the way they speak, the way they dress, or or the way they act to avoid being sexualized, which creates pressure towards assimilation because they're changing the way they are to fit more into society and to not be sexualized. All three stereotypes, the criminal, the service worker, and the hypersexual Latina, impact Latino identities in powerful ways. They can cause assimilation pressure, internalized bias, identity conflict, shame about cultural traits, and stereotype threat. Latino viewers may feel like they must distance themselves from like their culture or their identities to be seen as professional or like normal. Latino viewers may feel like they because of this they can like have real consequences on their either their social skills or their even their emotions and how they feel about themselves. For my evidence, I use the Omi and Winan theory of racial formation. They argue that media is a racial project. It says a process by which social, economic, and political forces determine the content and importance of racial categories, and by which they are in turn shaped by racial meanings. This basically means that, for example, media actively shapes the meaning of race in society, and media doesn't just show race, it defines it for some people. And when certain images repeat again and again, they become part of how America understands Latino identity. This influences both. public attitudes, and Latino self perception. These racial projects push Latino viewers towards assimilation because they don't want to be seen as the stereotypes they watch on the screen and movies and television. Although there's a lot of negative representation about Latino, there are also examples of positive and complex portrayals. And movies like Coco and Encanto and the TV show from Netflix on my blog, they highlight family, tradition, culture, and identity in more authentic ways. So these portrayals matters because they show Latinos as a full or like full human beings and not the stereotypes that we are typically seeing in movies and other TV shows. This positive representations open the door for better um, movies and TV shows representation in the future. So, in conclusion, media stereotypes reinforce inequality, distort identity in Latinos, and normalize racism. But representation is improving, as I showed on my last slide. The more we highlight authentic and diverse stories, the more we challenge the racial projects that define Latinos. And these are my references. I used the Omi and Wynand, and the second link is for the image that I used here, where it says the gardener's name in the movie, and it shows how the more typical names are Jose, Ramon, and Juan, but not really that many Steves, right? And just like the movies that I mentioned, and the movies and shows that I mentioned in my slides. Thank you.